The stars in the distant galaxy twinkled brightly, like countless diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. The alien fleet cruised through space at unimaginable speeds, their ships gliding silently among the stars. They were a race of advanced beings, far beyond anything humanity had achieved. Yet even they couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching something unknown, something dangerous. It had started as a routine mission. The alien fleet, led by Commander Velra, was tasked with scanning unknown objects in a remote sector of the galaxy. They had detected a strange signal, faint but distinct, emanating from deep within this uncharted space. Their sensors showed that the source of the signal was a massive object, an unknown ship. They had never seen anything like it before. As the fleet neared the object, tension filled the air. The ship was dark, almost camouflaged against the deep blackness of space, its edges sharp and angular. Unlike the smooth curves of most spacecraft the aliens were familiar with. The warship was large, too large for a ship built by any species they knew, but small enough to be considered a solitary vessel, isolated from any known fleet. The aliens didn't know who it belonged to or where it came from. Commander Velra's mind raced. She had heard rumors of human technology, but nothing concrete. Humans were considered an insignificant species in the galactic order, primitive, struggling to survive on their small planet. The very idea that one of their ships could be lurking in the vastness of space was hard to believe. Yet here it was, silently floating in the emptiness, with technology that even the most advanced alien races hadn't encountered before. "Initiate scans," Velra ordered, her voice steady but tense. The alien fleet scanners hummed to life, sending out pulses of energy to study the mysterious ship. At first, the readings were confusing. The warship seemed to be made of an unfamiliar material, something resistant to their standard scanning techniques. Commander Velra's brow furrowed as she examined the data on her control screen. The material was dense, far denser than anything they had encountered. It wasn't just tough. It was different, like it had been designed for something more than just protection. "What kind of ship is this?" Velra muttered under her breath. She had expected to find something old, perhaps an abandoned relic from a long-forgotten war. Instead, the ship felt alive. Its systems were powered, its engines humming with low, almost imperceptible energy. It was as if the ship had been waiting, watching for something. The fleet's sensors continued to scan, trying to map out the warship structure. But the ship wasn't just made of unfamiliar materials. It was also emitting strange energy patterns. The usual readings were fluctuating, like the warship was somehow resisting their scan. It was as though the ship was hiding something important. Then something remarkable happened. The ship began to respond to their scans. Not in a way that was immediately clear, but the energy readings started to shift, almost as if the warship was communicating with the alien fleet. The tension aboard Velra's ship grew thick. This wasn't just a piece of old technology. This was a sentient object, something that had been designed with purpose, with intelligence, perhaps even with a level of sophistication the aliens hadn't expected. Velra's heart raced as her mind processed the information. Could it be? Could the ship belong to the humans? She quickly ordered the fleet to increase their scan intensity. If this was indeed a human warship, they needed to understand it completely before making any further decisions. The last thing they wanted was to underestimate a race that they thought was weak and primitive. As the scans deepened, new data poured in. This time, it wasn't just the materials of the ship or the energy systems, but its weaponry. The first scan had only revealed a small portion of its capabilities. Now they were seeing something far more alarming. This ship had weapons. Not the kind of basic weapons that would be expected from a primitive species, but advanced, highly sophisticated armaments capable of destruction on an unimaginable scale. Commander Velra leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the weapon systems. The ship's armaments were unlike anything the alien fleet had in their arsenal. They were far more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen. In fact, they were so powerful that the aliens had trouble processing the data. The weapons were designed not just for defense or offense. They were designed to obliterate entire fleets in one strike. Whoever had built this ship, they had no intention of losing any battle they fought. "Prepare the fleet for defensive measures," Velra ordered, her voice sharp. "This ship is a threat." The alien fleet quickly began to adjust their positions, aligning themselves in a defensive formation, ready to react if the human warship showed any signs of aggression. The unknown nature of the ship left them on edge, and they couldn't afford to take chances. But the warship did nothing. It remained eerily still, floating silently in the void. The scans continued, but it became clear that the aliens weren't the only ones studying the ship. The warship was watching them back. As the alien fleet hovered nearby, Commander Velra couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There was no sign of life aboard the warship. No movement, no radio signals, no signs of communication. It was as if the ship was abandoned, but at the same time its technology suggested otherwise. The silence that hung in the air was unnerving, like the calm before a storm. It was then that Velra realized something terrifying. The ship wasn't just a military vessel. It was a warning. A message from humanity signaling that they were far more capable than the rest of the galaxy had ever imagined. And whatever humanity had hidden within that warship, it was something the aliens weren't ready for. The fleet fell into a deeper silence, the only sound the hum of their ship's engines as they continued to study the warship. The suspense was thick in the air. Every alien on board could feel it. The fear of the unknown. Something had changed in the galaxy, and no one, not even the aliens, knew how to react to the terrifying discovery before them. The silence hung heavily over the alien fleet, broken only by the hum of their ship's engines as they hovered in formation surrounding the human warship. Commander Velra's mind raced with the implications of what they had just uncovered. She had spent her entire life exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy, but nothing had prepared her for the ship they had just discovered. It wasn't just the technology, it was the sheer potential of the human warship that left her uneasy. "We need to know more," Velra said, her voice steady but filled with tension. "Increase power to the scanners. We're not leaving until we've learned everything we can about this ship." The fleet's engineers quickly followed her orders, boosting the output of their scanning arrays to maximum levels. The alien ships focused all of their resources on studying the warship's energy systems. They needed to understand how it worked, what powered it, and how it could be so advanced despite the apparent simplicity of human technology. At first, the readings didn't make sense. The energy source inside the warship wasn't like anything the aliens had encountered before. It wasn't based on any known power source in the galaxy. The warship's core was emitting energy signatures that fluctuated between stable and unstable patterns. It seemed as though the core was alive, shifting and adapting to the energy demands of the ship, as if it were a breathing organism. Velra stared at the data on her control screen. "This is impossible," she muttered, a sense of disbelief creeping into her voice. The energy core inside the warship wasn't just powerful. It was also highly efficient, something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The aliens had developed energy sources capable of sustaining their ships for decades, but this was something entirely different. The core seemed to pull energy from its surroundings, harnessing the very fabric of space itself. It was almost as if the ship's power system could tap into the infinite energy of the cosmos, a limitless source that the aliens could only dream of. "We're looking at a form of power generation far beyond anything we've ever created," Velra continued, her tone now a mixture of awe and fear. "If humanity has developed this kind of technology, then they've unlocked the key to untold power." The implications of this discovery were enormous. The alien fleet had spent millennia perfecting their own energy systems, but even their most advanced technology couldn't match the efficiency of the human warship's power core. If the humans had discovered a way to tap into space itself for energy, they could easily build fleets of ships that would rival anything the aliens had. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. But there was more to this warship than just its power core. The aliens continued to probe the ship's energy systems, trying to understand its full capabilities. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that this was no ordinary warship. The ship's design was minimalist, almost crude compared to the sleek, sophisticated ships of the alien fleet. Yet every detail seemed carefully chosen, as if each component had been built with one purpose in mind: to maximize the ship's ability to fight. The warship's exterior was made of a strange, dark material that resisted the alien scans. They couldn't penetrate it completely, and the energy readings they received were incomplete. It was almost as if the ship was hiding something, keeping its true strength buried beneath layers of secrecy. But the energy signatures that continued to pulse from within the ship told a different story. The warship wasn't just an advanced vessel. It was a weapon of mass destruction. Commander Velra's face grew tense as she looked over the data. The ship's power core wasn't just designed to fuel the warship. It had the potential to power devastating weapons capable of destroying entire planets. If the humans had perfected this kind of technology, they could wipe out entire civilizations with a single strike. The very thought sent a chill down Velra's spine. The alien fleet had fought in many battles, but never had they faced an opponent like this. "Commander, we're picking up something," one of the technicians said, breaking the tense silence. "It's a secondary power source, something hidden deep within the ship structure. It's not responding to our scans." Velra's eyes widened. A secondary power source, hidden deep within the ship? She ordered her fleet to focus all their efforts on uncovering this new source of energy. They needed to know what it was, and more importantly, what it could do. As the alien ships intensified their scans, a new pattern began to emerge. The secondary power source seemed to be a type of weapon, not just a backup for the ship's systems, but a destructive force of unimaginable power. It was capable of disintegrating entire fleets with a single pulse of energy, a weapon that could wipe out entire star systems with a single shot. The aliens had never encountered anything like it. The realization settled heavily on Commander Velra's shoulders. This warship wasn't just a vessel. It was a threat, and a powerful one at that. "We've underestimated them," Velra whispered to herself, the weight of the discovery sinking in. The humans weren't just a weak species scraping by on a small planet. They were capable of designing weapons that could obliterate entire civilizations. Their technology was more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen, and they had kept it hidden until now. The warship, with its unimaginable power, was just a glimpse of what humanity was capable of. The aliens had always believed that their technology was superior. They had been the dominant force in the galaxy for millennia, and they had never faced an opponent like this. But now, for the first time, they were beginning to realize that their supremacy was not guaranteed. Humanity had been silently watching, building, and preparing for a time when they would step into the galactic stage, ready to challenge the established order. Velra's mind raced as she processed this new information. The alien fleet was powerful, but humanity's warship had proven one thing: they were not to be underestimated. The galaxy was changing, and the humans were about to play a much bigger role in it than anyone had anticipated. As the alien fleet continued to study the warship, the feeling of unease deepened. They were no longer just observing an unknown ship. They were witnessing the birth of a new power, one that could rival their own. And for the first time, the aliens weren't sure if they were ready for what was coming. The tension aboard the alien fleet had reached a breaking point. Commander Velra stood at the command console, her gaze fixed on the data streaming across the screen. The scans had revealed something even more unsettling than they had anticipated. The warship was not only an advanced weapon, it was capable of something that no one in the galaxy had ever imagined. It could be controlled remotely. The secondary power source, previously thought to be a backup for the ship's core, was in fact the key to its true purpose. It was not just an energy source, but a command hub, capable of taking control of any nearby technology. The alien fleet had been so focused on understanding the ship's weapons that they had missed this crucial detail. But now, as Velra studied the data, the realization hit her like a wave. The human warship was not just a weapon. It was a force capable of turning the tide in any conflict. If the humans had mastered this technology, they could control entire fleets, entire systems, with nothing more than a signal. The thought of an entire armada of human ships, coordinated and synchronized by a single point of control, was enough to send a shiver down Velra's spine. "Are you saying the ship can hack into our systems?" one of her officers asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. Velra nodded slowly, her mind racing. "That's exactly what I'm saying. If we're not careful, this warship could take control of every ship in our fleet. It could disable our weapons, our engines, even our communication systems. We wouldn't be able to defend ourselves." The implications were terrifying. The alien fleet was powerful, but they were not invincible. They had always relied on their advanced technology, their weapons, and their systems. But if this human warship could override all of that, they would be helpless. It would be as if they were playing into the hands of their enemy, unaware of the invisible strings controlling their every move. The fleet's officers exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever heard of a weapon like this, one that could not only destroy, but dominate. And it was clear that the human warship had the ability to do just that. The unknown enemy they had assumed to be weak was suddenly much more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Velra's mind was a whirl of thoughts as she tried to process everything she had just learned. It was one thing to encounter a new and powerful weapon, but it was another thing entirely to face an enemy that could turn their own technology against them. The humans, who had once been dismissed as primitive and unworthy of attention, now held the key to a kind of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. "We need to neutralize this threat immediately," Velra said, her voice steely with resolve. "If we allowed the ship to escape, it could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy." Her officers nodded in agreement, but there was a sense of uncertainty in the air. The ship they faced was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The power it wielded was not just physical. It was mental, psychological. The warship's ability to control technology was a terrifying weapon, one that could cripple entire fleets with the flick of a switch. And yet, the human ship remained silent, still floating in space, as if it were watching them. For a moment, Velra hesitated. If the human warship truly had this kind of power, then the entire galaxy was at risk. The once unchallenged dominance of the alien fleet was no longer assured. The humans had played their cards well, hiding their technology until the moment was right. Now they were ready to reveal their strength, and the aliens were caught off guard. But there was more to the warship than just its weapons and control systems. As the fleet continued to scan, new data emerged. The ship was not only a weapon, it was also a repository of knowledge, perhaps even a living archive. The humans had designed the warship not only to fight, but to learn, to adapt, to evolve. It could analyze the tactics of its enemies, learn from them, and then develop countermeasures on the fly. The longer they studied the warship, the more they realized that it wasn't just a machine. It was a tool of war that was constantly growing stronger. And that was the most frightening part. "This ship isn't just a one-off," Velra muttered as her fingers danced over the control panel. "The humans are capable of building more of these. This warship is just the beginning." The officers around her were silent, the weight of the realization pressing down on them. They had always believed that the galaxy's power would remain in the hands of a few select races. Races that had mastered advanced technologies, military strategies, and the art of warfare. But now, a new power was emerging. The humans, once thought to be insignificant, had just revealed a level of technological sophistication that rivaled, and perhaps even surpassed, anything the aliens had achieved. "We need to prepare for a new kind of war," Velra continued, her voice now hard with determination. "One where we're not just fighting ships, we're fighting an intelligence. We need to understand the ship and its creators before it's too late." Her orders were clear. The fleet would continue to observe the warship, but they would also prepare for a potential confrontation. If the humans were truly capable of creating more ships like this, then the alien fleet would need to adapt quickly or risk being overrun. Velra looked out at the dark expanse of space, the human warship hovering silently in the distance. She knew that the discovery they had just made was more than just an encounter. It was a turning point. The galaxy was about to change, and whether the alien fleet was ready or not, the humans were now a force to be reckoned with. And that thought, more than anything, sent a chill down her spine. The quiet of space was deafening. Commander Velra stood at the helm of the alien flyship, her gaze locked on the human warship that remained motionless, still and silent like a predator waiting for its moment. The more she observed it, the more she understood one undeniable truth. The humans were not to be underestimated. The ship was just the beginning. They had hidden their true power, biding their time, until now. "Commander," one of her officers said, breaking the stillness, "we've analyzed the warship's energy signatures. It's not just a threat. It's a message." Velra's mind sharpened at the words, "A message." She turned to face the officer, her expression unreadable. "What do you mean?" "It's like the ship's very presence is a declaration of war," the officer continued. "Every element of its design, the hidden power core, the ability to hack into our systems, the secondary weapons, it's as if they've been preparing for this moment for years. We thought they were weak, but it seems they've been preparing for something bigger." The words sent a cold rush through Velra's veins. She had never expected this. The humans, with their humble beginnings, had spent years building up their strength, gathering power, and developing the very weapons that could change the fate of the galaxy. What was supposed to be a simple encounter had now escalated into something far more dangerous. "We can't just sit here and wait," Velra said, her voice low but firm. "We need to act, and we need to act quickly. If we don't, we risk losing everything." As the fleet commanders gathered around, an air of urgency settled over the room. They had already underestimated the humans, and now they faced the consequences. The alien fleet was powerful, yes, but their technology was no longer superior. If the humans had truly mastered the art of war in this way, using technology not just to fight, but to control and adapt, then the alien fleet could not afford to be complacent. "Prepare all ships for battle," Velra ordered. "We'll engage the human warship and neutralize the threat before it has a chance to strike. All communications will be scrambled. No signals in or out. We need to keep this under control." But even as she gave the orders, a feeling of doubt gnawed at Velra's thoughts. She had been a commander for years, leading her fleet through countless battles, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. A ship that could not only rival their technology but could override it. It was a new kind of warfare, one they had never encountered before. The alien fleet began to power up its weapons, readying itself for what was sure to be a battle unlike any they had fought before. Every ship aligned itself with deadly precision, their energy shields flashing as they prepared for a direct confrontation. Yet the human warship remained eerily still, its dark, hulking form just a shadow against the backdrop of the stars. "Commander," another officer spoke up, a hint of concern in their voice. "We've tried sending a message to the warship. There's no response, not even a single acknowledgement." Velra's gaze hardened. "The humans are playing a dangerous game. They know we're here. They know we're about to attack. And yet they remain silent. Why?" The unanswered question lingered in the air. Why had the human ship not made any attempt to defend itself, to retaliate? Was it a sign of arrogance, or was there something more sinister at play? Perhaps the humans knew something the aliens didn't. Something that made them confident they could withstand an attack. Or maybe the warship itself was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Suddenly, a sharp beep rang through the command deck, pulling Velra from her thoughts. Her eyes flicked to the control panel. "Incoming transmission, Commander," the officer said, his voice betraying his surprise. "It's coming from the human warship." Velra's pulse quickened. She had expected a fight, but a message. What could they possibly want to say at this moment? "Put it through," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension rising in her chest. The screen flickered to life, and a figure appeared, human, dressed in the uniform of their military. He stood against a backdrop of machinery, a slight smirk on his face. The calmness in his demeanor was unsettling considering the circumstances. "This is Commander Joshua Hayes of the United Earth Fleet," the man said, his voice clear and confident. "I assume you've had time to analyze our warship by now. What you've seen is only the beginning. We've been preparing for this moment for a long time." Velra stiffened. The man spoke with authority, but there was something more beneath his words, a quiet confidence that was both unnerving and intriguing. "You've been preparing?" Velra echoed. "For what?" Joshua's eyes glinted, and for the first time, a true smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "For you." The words hit like a thunderclap. Velra felt her blood run cold. For a brief moment she couldn't speak. What was he implying? Was this a declaration of war? Was this what humanity had been building toward? "We know you've been watching us, Velra," Joshua continued, his tone still calm, almost too calm. "We know you've been studying our warship, and we know you're preparing to strike. But let me tell you something. This warship is only a small piece of a much bigger picture. We've already begun the process of bringing more of our fleet online. Soon there will be no stopping us." The screen flickered again, and Joshua's image vanished, leaving only a static-filled void. The transmission was over. For a long moment, Velra stood frozen, the weight of the human commander's words pressing down on her. They had been watching. They had been preparing. And now they were ready to fight. She turned to her officers, who were now staring at her, their faces filled with disbelief and concern. "Prepare to engage," she said, her voice a low growl. "We've been underestimating them for too long. This is no longer a simple encounter. It's the beginning of a war." The countdown had begun. There would be no turning back now. The alien fleet moved into formation, its ships aligning like deadly wolves preparing to pounce on their prey. A hum of energy filled the space as their weapons powered up, ready for the imminent conflict. The tension among the alien commanders was palpable. This was no ordinary battle. This was the beginning of a new era, one where their very dominance in the galaxy would be tested like never before. Commander Velra stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the human warship that hovered in the distance. It was still silent, motionless. The humanity behind the warship was hiding, calculating its next move, but Velra knew they were prepared. They had already given their message loud and clear. Their confidence was chilling. They had revealed their hand, and now it was time to see if the aliens could withstand what was coming. "Status report," Velra ordered, her voice cutting through the air. One of her officers quickly checked the systems. "All ships are ready for engagement. Weapons primed. Shields are at full capacity. We're locked on to the human warship. Awaiting your command." Velra nodded, her mind racing. The more she thought about the human warship, the more unsettling it became. It wasn't just the firepower it possessed. It was the sense of control it exuded, like a predator playing with its prey before delivering the fatal blow. This warship was not just a machine. It was a symbol of humanity's determination to fight back against an overwhelming force. "We will not let them intimidate us," Velra said, her voice hard as steel. "This is our galaxy. We will fight for it." Without waiting for another second, she issued the command. "Open fire." A barrage of energy blasts shot out from the alien ships, arcing through space toward the human warship. The deadly beams of light illuminated the dark void, streaking toward their target. The alien fleet's weapons were powerful, built for efficiency and destruction. They had never encountered anything that could withstand their full force, not until now. However, the human warship remained eerily still, not attempting to dodge or retaliate. The beams of energy slammed into its shields, creating flashes of light that momentarily lit up the space around them. But when the light faded, the human warship remained intact, its shields holding firm. There was no sign of damage, no sign of weakness. It was as if the warship had absorbed the entire assault without a scratch. Velra's eyes widened in disbelief. "What is this? Their shields. They're stronger than anything we've ever seen." The human warship, seemingly unfazed, finally responded. A low hum filled the air as its own weapons powered up. Velra braced herself, expecting the worst. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. A bright, almost blinding beam of energy shot out from the warship, streaking through space toward the alien fleet. In an instant, the beam hit one of the alien ships, slicing through its shields like paper. The ship's energy core exploded in a violent eruption of light, disintegrating the vessel in a single, devastating strike. The shockwave from the explosion rippled through space, causing other ships in the fleet to shake under the force. The crew on Velra's ship stumbled as the tremor hit. The sensors went haywire, and the alarms blared, signaling the catastrophic damage they had just sustained. But it wasn't just the damage that struck fear into Velra's heart. It was the realization that the humans were holding back. That single blast had taken out one of the most formidable ships in the alien fleet with ease. What else could they do? Damage report. Velra shouted, her voice rising in panic. Shields are at 75%, one of her officers reported. We've lost one of our smaller cruisers. Weapons are still functioning, but the impact was far greater than anticipated. It's like they've adapted to our technology somehow. Velra clenched her fists. This wasn't just a battle of firepower anymore. The humans were using strategy, intelligence, and an unexpected level of innovation. They were outsmarting them at every turn. Regroup and reassess, Velra ordered. We need to understand what they're doing. Why did their blast destroy our ship so quickly? What's the secret behind their technology? Her officers scrambled to analyze the data, but it was clear that the enemy was always one step ahead. The human warship had responded to their attack with precision, effortlessly neutralizing their offensive. Then another transmission came through, this time not from the human commander, but from the warship itself. It was a simple message, but one that made Velra's blood run cold. "We are Earth," the voice said, its tone calm and emotionless. "We do not lose." Velra stared at the communication screen, her mind reeling. She knew the galaxy's power dynamics were shifting, but she hadn't anticipated this level of aggression, this level of fearlessness from the humans. They had come not just to defend themselves, but to dominate. They had been preparing for this moment, and now the entire galaxy would feel the weight of their strength. "We've underestimated them for too long," Velra muttered to herself. "This war is far from over." The alien fleet continued its advance, but now it was clear that the human warship was no longer just a threat. It was a warning. The galaxy would have to rethink everything it knew about warfare. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were a force to be reckoned with. And for the first time, Velra realized that victory was no longer guaranteed. The countdown to a new era had begun, and the battle was far from over. The battlefield was silent for a fleeting moment, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The remains of the alien cruiser slowly drifted in the cold expanse of space, its disintegration a stark reminder of the raw power humanity now wielded. But that single blast was only the beginning. The human warship, unyielding and defiant, loomed in the distance, like an indomitable fortress. Velra stood at the helm of her flyship, her gaze fixed on the remnants of the destroyed cruiser. The loss was heavy, but the real shock came from realizing that the human ship had not only survived their initial barrage, but had countered with unmatched precision. They had crippled their fleet in an instant. This was no longer a skirmish. It was a battle for control over the very future of the galaxy. "Commander," an officer said cautiously, breaking the silence. "We've received another transmission from the human warship." Velra's heart skipped a beat. Another message. They had just spoken moments ago, but their silence had been unnerving. What more could they possibly say? "Put it through," Velra ordered, her voice tinged with frustration and curiosity. The transmission came through with no fanfare. The same human officer from before, Commander Joshua Hayes, appeared on the screen, his expression calm, though his eyes carried a subtle, almost imperceptible gleam of satisfaction. "This is Commander Joshua Hayes," he said once again, his voice carrying the weight of quiet confidence. I hope you've had time to reflect on our earlier conversation, Commander Velra. What you've seen is only a glimpse of what's to come. Velra's mind raced. The humans were speaking like they already knew the outcome, like they were in control. This was not a good sign. They were playing a game of strategy, one the aliens were not prepared for. You've underestimated us, Velra, Joshua continued, the edge in his voice growing sharper. You thought you could intimidate us with your technology, your power, but we've had time to study your fleet, your tactics. We've been preparing for this war for years, and now it's our turn to set the pace. Velra clenched her fists in frustration. How could they be so sure of themselves? They had no idea of the strength of the alien fleets, the vast resources at their disposal. And yet this human commander spoke as if victory was already in their grasp. It was maddening. Tell me, Commander, Velra said, her voice low but laced with a venomous edge. What exactly do you think you can accomplish? You may have dealt a blow to our fleet, but we are not so easily beaten. You have no idea what you're up against. Joshua's lips curled into a faint smile. No, Velra. I don't think you understand. We know exactly what we're up against, and that's why we're ready to fight. He paused, and for a moment, the screen flickered. Velra's heart skipped as a new image appeared, one that made her stomach drop. It was a map of the galaxy with Earth at the center. Several key points were highlighted in red, and each was linked by lines, forming an intricate web of strategy that spread across the stars. The markings were unmistakable: human strongholds, military bases, research facilities. The map stretched far beyond the known territories of the alien empire. What you see here, Commander, Joshua's voice came through again, is a visual representation of what we've been building. We've been quietly placing our forces across the galaxy, far beyond what you can track. We're not just reacting to your actions, we're anticipating them. The realization hit Velra like a physical blow. The humans had anticipated their every move. They had already put their plan into motion long before the alien fleet had even arrived. The warship was just one piece of a much larger strategy, a strategy that involved more than just firepower. It was about positioning, about controlling the galaxy's critical resources, and above all, about taking the initiative. We're not just fighting you in space, Velra, Joshua continued, his voice growing colder. We've already begun infiltrating your systems, your networks, your communication lines. You're already losing. Velra's blood ran cold. The thought that the humans had already breached their most secure systems was terrifying. How had they managed to do it so quietly? How had they gotten so close without the aliens detecting them? It was unthinkable. The humans had advanced far beyond their expectations, and they weren't just fighting. They were dominating every level of warfare. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. You're playing a dangerous game, Commander, she said, trying to maintain her composure. If you think you can win this war, you're gravely mistaken. You don't understand the extent of our power. Joshua's eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. No, Commander. I don't think it's you who understands. You're the ones who don't realize what's coming next. Velra's instincts screamed that the humans were not bluffing. Their intelligence was far more advanced than she had imagined. Every move, every decision was calculated with terrifying precision. It wasn't just about firepower. It was about control. The humans were playing a long game, and they were winning. I've seen enough, Velra said, cutting off the transmission. She turned to her officers, her voice cold. Prepare for a full-scale attack. We'll make our stand now, or we'll lose everything. But even as she said the words, doubt gnawed at her. The humans were far more dangerous than they had let on. And as the alien fleet prepared for its next move, Velra knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was on the brink of a new order, and it might not be the one the aliens could control. The countdown to humanity's rise had begun, and the battle for the future was far from over. The tension in space was unbearable, as both sides prepared for the final confrontation. Velra stood on the bridge of her flyship, her hands clenched tightly around the cold metallic railing. The countdown to war had begun, and every moment stretched on forever, thick with uncertainty. Despite their overwhelming strength, the aliens couldn't shake the feeling that this battle would not unfold as they had planned. Humanity was no longer the underdog, and the galaxy was about to learn that it was their turn to dominate. "We've been through the motions of war, but this is different," Velra muttered to herself. "This is their war now." The alien fleet had regrouped, with their ships lined up in a tight formation, their weapons primed for an all-out assault. They had all the firepower in the galaxy, but it no longer felt like enough. The human warship had withstood their most powerful strikes without so much as a scratch. It had sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, shaking the commander's confidence to its core. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the human warship," one of Velra's officers reported, breaking the silence in the room. Velra's heart pounded. Not another message. But this time there was no hesitation in her voice. She had to know what the humans were planning. "Put it through," she ordered sharply. The screen flickered to life, and once again Commander Joshua Hayes appeared. This time his expression was more serious, devoid of the previous smugness that had infuriated Velra. There was a subtle gravity in his posture, and it made her feel that the stakes of this war were about to change forever. "Commander Velra," Joshua began, his voice calm but firm. "This is it. This is where we end this." Velra's mind raced. "End this? What do you mean, Commander?" Joshua leaned forward slightly, his eyes meeting hers through the screen. "What you've witnessed so far is only the beginning of what we've prepared. We've been watching you, studying you, waiting for this moment. And now we're going to show you something that will change everything." Velra narrowed her eyes. "And what exactly do you plan to do?" Joshua's face hardened, and for the first time, there was no amusement in his voice. "We didn't just bring a warship. We brought an entire fleet of advanced technology, but more importantly, we brought something far more powerful: the will of humanity." Velra was taken aback by the statement. The humans had been underestimating themselves, but now she realized that their strength was not just in technology. It was in their unyielding will to survive and dominate. This was a force that no weapon could measure. The screen flickered once more, and this time, Velra saw something she hadn't expected. The human warship was flanked by hundreds, no, thousands, of smaller, sleek vessels, each one looking far more advanced than any alien ship. They were fast, agile, and their design seemed to focus on one thing: efficiency. Joshua spoke again. "What you're looking at is humanity's true strength. These are not just warships. These are the next stage in our evolution. They represent our ability to adapt, to learn, and to grow. And today, Commander Velra, we will use them to ensure that humanity's place in this galaxy is secure." The sheer scale of what she was witnessing sent a chill through Velra's spine. The alien fleet, despite its superior size and firepower, was outmatched. The human ships were everywhere. Every point of the galaxy seemed covered by their presence. The galaxy wasn't just facing a fight for survival. It was facing the dawn of humanity's dominion. "You've made a grave mistake, Velra," Joshua continued. "You thought you could intimidate us with your technology, your power, your numbers. But what you didn't count on was the human spirit. We don't back down. We don't fear the unknown. And that's why we'll win." Velra tried to steady her breath, but the words hit her like a storm. The alien empire had always relied on their technology and their sheer numbers to dominate, but they had failed to account for the one thing that the humans had in abundance: resolve. Humanity had nothing to lose anymore, and that made them unstoppable. "What will you do now, Commander?" Joshua's voice was calm, almost as if he were asking her to make a final decision. "You've seen what we're capable of. You've seen what we've prepared. And now you must decide. Do you continue this fight and risk the annihilation of your fleet, or do you surrender and face the new order?" Velra's mind was racing. She had never faced an enemy like this. The human resolve was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. They had caught the aliens off guard, and now they were in a position to dictate the terms of the war. The reality was sinking in. The alien empire, despite its might, was not the unstoppable force it once believed itself to be. For a moment, Velra was silent. She stared at the map of human vessels that filled the screen, a silent acknowledgement of their vast, unexpected power. The galaxy was no longer just a battlefield. It was humanity's to conquer, to shape as they saw fit. Joshua's voice broke through her thoughts. "You can't stop what's coming, Velra. The future belongs to us. The galaxy belongs to us, and there's nothing you can do to change that." With those final words, the transmission ended. The screen went black, but the weight of his words lingered, pressing heavily on Velra's mind. The alien fleet was no longer the superior force. Humanity had redefined the balance of power in a way no one could have anticipated. Velra looked out at the endless expanse of space, at the thousands of human ships that now encircled her fleet. The galaxy had changed in ways that were impossible to comprehend. The war was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. The age of humanity's rise had come, and no one, not even the mighty alien empire, could stop it. The galaxy was about to witness a new chapter, a chapter written by the hand of humanity.